One of the most powerful things you can do in life is disappear for a while, not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but out of strength, out of self-respect. Because sometimes the world only learns your worth when they no longer have daily access to it. When you're always present, always available, always showing up, people can forget the weight of your presence. That's the irony of consistency. It becomes background noise to those who never had to live without it. But the real power lies in what happens when you step away, when you take a pause. When you choose silence, distance, and a little bit of mystery, that's when they start to feel it. That's when they notice, because value isn't proved by presence, it's felt in absence. You see, it's in our nature to get comfortable with what's always there. Think about it. The sun rises every day, and most of the time we don't even look up. It's only when it's hidden behind the clouds for days on end that we start craving its warmth. People are the same. If you're always giving, always showing up, always solving, fixing, loving, understanding, they start to believe that's just who you are. They assume you'll always be there, and eventually they stop thanking you for it. They stop appreciating the effort. They don't even see it anymore. That's why it's so important to step back, not as a strategy, but as self-preservation. When you give too much of yourself to people who don't even notice they're being given a gift, you drain your own magic. You start to lose the sparkle, not because you're any less brilliant, but because you're surrounded by eyes that don't see it. And that is where absence becomes your power move. Your silence becomes the mirror they didn't know they needed. Your distance becomes the lesson they didn't think they had to learn. It's not about playing games. It's about rebalancing the energy, about giving yourself space to recharge while giving others the space to recognize. Because the truth is, people don't value what's always at arm's reach. They value what's missed, what's no longer easy to access, what suddenly feels rare. And if you've been overextending yourself in a space where your effort has become invisible, the greatest act of self-love might just be to walk away, not forever, but long enough for them to realize what they had. Think about the times you've missed someone, not because they said something grand, but because of how they made you feel when they were around. Maybe they had this energy that made everything feel lighter. Maybe they saw you in a way no one else did, and now that they're not around, their absence lingers. That is the power you hold. You can be that person, but not if you're constantly available, not if you're always answering, always showing up, always trying to prove that you're enough. You already are. People will start to notice the little things, the texts that don't come, the laughs that don't fill the room, the advice that's no longer freely given, that empty space. That's where realization blooms. That's where the respect starts to build again, because now they're looking at the space you left behind and asking themselves, was I appreciating that person enough? They begin to sit with the silence and question their own noise. And that right there is where your value gets reevaluated. Not because you shouted your worth, but because you removed your presence. And when they miss you, it won't just be nostalgia, it'll be reflection. It'll be clarity. It'll be the echo of everything you brought into their world. It'll be the sudden understanding that you weren't just someone who existed. You were someone who mattered, and you still do. But now you matter to yourself first. That's the shift. So when you feel like you're being taken for granted, remember this. Stepping back isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's choosing to let your worth speak in the silence. It's knowing that the most unforgettable people are the ones who knew when to walk away, so their absence could teach what their presence never could. Energy is currency, and the sooner you realize that, the more powerful you become. Just like money, your energy is limited. You don't have an infinite supply to hand out to every situation, every person, or every problem. Every time you give your energy away, as someone who doesn't reciprocate, to something that drains you, to situations that go nowhere, you're spending a part of yourself, and not every transaction is worth it. The truth is, we don't always treat our energy like the precious resource it is. We overspend, we overgive, and we stretch ourselves thin trying to be everything for everyone. But at some point, you have to stop and ask, what am I getting in return? The problem is, Society romanticizes the hustle, the overextension, the idea that giving endlessly is a sign of strength. But real strength, real power, it comes from discernment, from knowing what deserves your attention and what doesn't. It's easy to fall into the trap of people pleasing or constantly showing up just because you feel obligated. But giving your energy out of guilt is like spending money out of fear. You never get a good return on that investment. You walk away empty, depleted, questioning yourself. The people around you, whether they admit it or not, feel the difference between someone who shows up out of joy and someone who shows up out of duty. Your energy speaks before your words do, and if you've ever walked into a room and felt exhausted before you even said hello, that's a sign. That's your intuition telling you, you're overspending here. This place, this person, this pattern, it's too expensive. You don't have to buy your place in anyone's life by offering unlimited access to your time, your kindness, your presence. Boundaries are not walls, they're budgets. You don't deny people love, you just manage how and where it's spent. You don't stop caring, you just learn to care wisely, because not everyone you meet deserves the full version of you. Some people only qualify for the preview, and that's okay. You don't need to feel guilty for protecting your energy. You're not selfish, you're smart. You've learned, probably the hard way, that not all connections are equal. Some will lift you up and pour into you. Others will take and take until you have nothing left to give, and you cannot afford to give your light to those who only show up when it's convenient for them. Every time you choose peace over chaos, silence over arguments, stillness over noise, you're saving energy. You're making a deposit into your emotional bank account, and when you build up that reserve, you show up stronger, more grounded, more whole, not out of desperation but out of choice. You're no longer reacting to everything. You're responding to what asterisk deserves asterisk a response. That's the shift. That's when you stop moving through the world like you owe it something and start moving like you own your worth. And people will notice. They'll notice when your energy is no longer easy to access. When your validation isn't free, when your presence requires effort and respect, and the ones who truly value you will rise to meet that standard, the ones who don't, let them fall away. You can't keep watering dead plants and expecting a garden. You can't keep showing up for people who never ask how you're really doing. Your energy is too rare, too golden, to be spent on things that don't feed your soul in return. So start treating your time like treasure and your energy like wealth. Spend it where it circulates, where it grows, where it comes back to you tenfold, and remember, when you stop giving discounts on your worth, the right people will never ask for a bargain. They'll show up ready to match your value, not drain it. Because energy doesn't lie, it either connects or it costs, and you get to decide what's worth the price. Silence is one of the most underrated forms of power in a world that constantly demands noise, opinions, explanations, justifications. Choosing silence can feel like rebellion. But it's not just rebellion, it's wisdom, it's control, it's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to prove anything anymore. Silence isn't emptiness, it's full of intention, and sometimes it says more than words ever could. There's a moment after the noise fades, when arguments go quiet, when the texts stop, when the energy shifts, that silence moves in and it speaks. It speaks in the space where words used to rush. It speaks in the absence of effort. And what it says depends on who's listening. To some, silence is confusion. To others, it's clarity. But for the one choosing it, it's peace. Because silence is the boundary that doesn't have to be shouted. It's the wall built not out of bricks, but out of stillness. It tells the world, I'm done performing, I'm done begging, I'm done explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. When you go silent, especially after being someone who always explained, always responded, always made sure everyone was okay, that shift is deafening and people feel it. Suddenly, they're left with nothing to push against. No reaction to trigger, no emotional feedback to manipulate. Silence removes the audience from their performance, and when there's no one left to play to, they have to face themselves. That's when the real discomfort starts, not for you, but for them. There's a particular kind of power in silence that comes when you've outgrown chaos, when you realize that arguing back doesn't make your point stronger, it just makes your peace more expensive. You don't need to match every accusation with a defense. You don't have to explain every boundary you've set. You don't owe your inner peace as a trade for external validation. Silence in that space is not weakness. It's strategy. It's the shift from proving your worth to protecting it. And let's be honest, some people don't listen to understand. They listen to reply. They twist your words, gaslight your truths, and minimize your feelings. Talking to them is like trying to explain the color blue to someone who refuses to open their eyes. So why keep trying? Why keep repeating yourself in conversations where your voice is treated like background noise? Choosing silence doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've chosen yourself. There's a deep self-respect in walking away quietly, in letting your absence echo louder than your presence ever did, because silence forces reflection. It holds up a mirror, and the people who truly value you will hear the message your silence carries. They'll feel the distance. They'll notice the absence of your energy, your support, your love, and those who never appreciated you when you were loud, present, and available. They won't hear it, because they were never really listening in the first place. But here's the thing, silence isn't just for them, it's for you. It's a sanctuary, a soft, sacred place where you get to hear your own thoughts again, where you get to sit with your own emotions without outside interference. It's in the silence that healing happens, that clarity is born, that strength is rebuilt. When the world stops demanding your voice, you finally remember what it sounds like to think for yourself, and it doesn't mean you'll be silent forever. But now, when you speak again, it will be intentional. You won't waste your breath on dead-end conversations. You won't break your own peace just to keep the illusion of harmony. You'll speak when it matters. And when it doesn't, you'll let your silence be the final word, because you've learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Self-worth is not up for debate. It's not a negotiation. It's not something you put on the table for others to examine, poke holes in, or weigh against their standards. It's not based on who accepts you, who chooses you, or who stays. It doesn't hinge on compliments, attention, likes, validation, or approval. Self-worth is internal. It's something you claim, not something you earn, and when you truly understand that, you stop performing, you stop shrinking, you stop bending yourself into shapes just to fit into spaces you were never meant for. The world will try to make you question yourself. It will hand you mirrors that are broken and ask you to define yourself by the reflection. It will give you rules you never wrote and expect you to play by them anyway. It will make you feel like you're too much in one room and not enough in another, and if you're not anchored in your own worth, you'll start to believe it. You'll start to measure yourself by how well you fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. You'll become a chameleon, constantly changing colors to match the environment, never realizing how much power there is in standing out. There's a difference between being open to growth and bending for acceptance. One comes from strength, the other from fear. Growth is rooted in self-respect. It says, I'm evolving because I love myself enough to want better. Bending for acceptance says, I'll change so you won't leave. And every time you choose to bend out of fear, a little piece of your confidence gets lost. You start to tie your value to the way others respond to you, and when that response fades, or never comes, you're left questioning your worth all over again. But here's the truth. How someone treats you is a reflection of them, not a measure of your value. You could be the most thoughtful, kind, beautiful, intelligent person in the room, and some people will still overlook you. Not because you're lacking, but because they're not capable of seeing you clearly. Their vision is limited, their perception is blurred, and that's not your responsibility to fix. You're not here to be universally liked. You're not here to be digestible for everyone. You're here to be real, and sometimes real is too bold, too raw, too honest for people who are still hiding behind filters. The moment you stop asking the world to define your value is the moment you start living freely. You stop waiting for the callback. You stop needing the reassurance. You stop feeling broken when someone walks away because you know, truly know, that their leaving doesn't make you any less worthy. It just makes space for something or someone more aligned with who you really are. That's the shift, that's the power, when your self-worth becomes non-negotiable, rejection no longer stings the same. You don't see it as a loss, you see it as redirection. You don't chase people, you attract. And you attract best when you're fully standing in your truth, not when you're pretending, not when you're adjusting yourself like you're too much volume in a quiet room. You are not too loud, you are not too intense. You are not too emotional, too deep, too ambitious, too sensitive. You are exactly what you are meant to be, and the right people, the ones who see you, will never ask you to dim. They will never make you feel like you have to earn their love or prove your value. There is nothing more magnetic than someone who knows their worth and moves like it. They walk into a room and don't seek attention. It just finds them, not because they demand it, but because their energy says, I'm whole already. And that wholeness, it's rare, it's beautiful, it's powerful. You become untouchable in the best way, because no one can take away what they never gave you. Your worth doesn't increase when someone praises you, and it doesn't decrease when they ignore you. It stays the same, steady, solid, true. That's the kind of self-worth that carries you through every season, the kind that doesn't need defending, the kind that doesn't ask for permission to take up space. The kind that says, I belong here, not because you said so, but because I decided I do. Let distance be a mirror. When you take a step back from someone or something, you're not just creating space, you're revealing truths. You're pulling away the comfort of routine, the warmth of your presence, the ease of your availability, and in that empty space, reflection begins, not just for you, but for the people on the other side of the distance. They start to feel the absence, but more importantly, they begin to see what they were too close to truly recognize. Because when you're always there, always showing up, always giving, people can lose sight of how much you actually bring to the table. They start to see your presence as a given rather than a gift. Distance has a way of removing the blur. It sharpens the view. It forces people to sit with the reality of your role in their life, not just the convenience of it. When you were always a call away, always ready to listen, to support, to fix, they might not have realized how deeply that mattered. But when you're no longer immediately reachable, when your energy pulls back, the contrast becomes undeniable. That's when it clicks. What they thought was ordinary was actually exceptional. What they took for granted was never promised, and that mirror, the one held up by your absence, doesn't lie. For you, distance is clarity. It's peace. It's the removal of noise so you can hear your own voice again. When you're constantly surrounded by other people's needs, moods, and expectations, it's easy to lose track of your own. It's easy to start responding instead of deciding, pleasing instead of living. Distance resets that balance. It gives you room to breathe, to process, to reflect on what you've been pouring yourself into. Have they been meeting you halfway? Have they appreciated your efforts? Or have they just expected them? And here's where the mirror cuts deep. Not everyone will reflect growth. Some will reflect entitlement. They'll respond to your distance with confusion, or worse, resentment. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your absence highlighted the parts of them that were selfish, complacent, or emotionally dependent. People who have grown used to you overfunctioning in the relationship won't know what to do with the silence. They'll wonder why you're suddenly acting different, when in reality, you've simply stopped doing all the emotional labor. That's the risk of being someone who cares deeply. You start to think that if you don't carry the connection, it'll fall apart. And sometimes it does, but that's the whole point of the distance, to see if it was ever balanced in the first place, to see if the relationship, friendship, or connection was sustained by mutual respect or just your effort. Because real relationships don't fall apart when you take a step back. They stretch, they adjust, they hold, and the people who truly value you will use the distance to reflect, not to react. They'll take that mirror and say, I miss them. I didn't realize how much they were doing. I need to show up better. Others will walk away, and that's okay. Not every connection is meant to last. Some people were only meant to be part of your story temporarily, and distance simply reveals that truth sooner. The beauty of that is you don't have to guess anymore. You don't have to wonder where you stand. The silence, the space, the mirror, it tells you everything. Distance isn't about punishment. It's about perspective. It's about giving others the opportunity to look inward instead of outward, to consider their own behavior, their own presence in your life. And it's about giving you the space to reclaim your energy, to decide whether the connection is still worth your time, your heart, your peace. Let distance do what closeness sometimes can't. Let it speak the words you're too tired to say. Let it ask the questions you've been answering alone for too long. And when it reflects back the truth, whether beautiful or brutal, trust it, because the mirror never lies. It just reveals what's already there. There's a point in life where you stop chasing closure and start choosing peace. It's the moment you realize that not everyone is capable of giving you the answers you're looking for, not because you don't deserve them, but because some people simply aren't honest with themselves, let alone with you. You can spend months, even years, analyzing conversations, replaying memories, and trying to understand how something so strong faded into silence. You can exhaust yourself seeking the perfect explanation, the final conversation, the apology that never comes. But eventually, you come to understand that closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you give yourself. It's a decision, a quiet, powerful moment where you say, I'm done waiting for clarity from someone who couldn't give me honesty when it mattered. It's when you realize your healing can't be put on hold just because someone walked away without looking back. You stop needing to know why they did what they did. You stop needing the final word, because you learn that peace isn't found in answers, it's found in acceptance. Acceptance that some people will never own their part. Some will rewrite the story to paint themselves as the victim. Some will act like you never mattered just to make it easier for them to move on. That's their journey, not yours. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in a neat little conversation where everything makes sense and you both part with mutual understanding. Sometimes closure is a slow internal process. A release, a letting go. Sometimes it's the decision to stop picking at the wound, to stop waiting for the text, the call, the explanation. You stop checking their page. You stop wondering if they ever think about you. Because you finally realize it doesn't change anything. Knowing what went wrong won't undo the pain. Getting the answers won't magically make you whole again. Only you can do that, and when you stop chasing closure, you start finding yourself again. The energy you were pouring into confusion starts pouring back into you. You start rediscovering your own voice, your own joy, your own rhythm. You remember the parts of yourself that got lost while you were holding on to someone who had already let go. You start showing up for yourself in a way you once hoped they would, and that's real closure, when you become the person you needed, when you give yourself the compassion, the forgiveness, the understanding that someone else couldn't. It's not always easy. There will be days when the silence is loud, when the memories sneak in and you question everything all over again. But little by little, you stop letting those thoughts control you. You start to trust that the ending happened for a reason, even if you'll never know exactly what that reason was. You learn that not all stories need a perfect conclusion to be complete. Some people come into your life just to teach you how strong you are when they leave. Some connections end to make space for something more aligned, more fulfilling, more whole. You don't need their closure to move forward. You need your decision to stop going backward, to stop reopening the door to people who walked out without care, to stop rereading old chapters hoping they'll suddenly make sense. The real growth comes when you no longer need the apology, when you stop fantasizing about the perfect conversation where they finally see your worth. Because now you see it, and that's enough. Peace doesn't always look like a happy ending. Sometimes it's a quiet morning when your heart doesn't ache anymore. Sometimes it's laughing again without guilt. Sometimes it's no longer feeling the urge to explain your side of the story. It's not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes peace is just the absence of pain, and that's what makes it powerful. So instead of chasing closure from those who never knew how to handle your heart, chase peace. Choose it, protect it, create it, because when you stop waiting for them to make things right, you finally give yourself permission to be free, and that freedom, that's the closure you were searching for all along. Let them feel your absence. Not out of spite, not out of pettiness, but out of self-respect, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop showing up, stop overcompensating, stop making yourself small to keep others comfortable. Your consistent presence, your patience, your loyalty, they were never meant to be seen as guarantees, they were gifts, and when someone treats what you offer as disposable, that's your cue, that's when you pull back, not to punish, but to protect. Because your energy, your time, your soul, they are not limitless resources. They deserve to be spent where they are valued. There comes a point when you realize you've been giving too much and receiving too little. You've been the one who reaches out first, the one who always forgives, the one who stays even when the room feels empty, and the silence, it's deafening, not because they've left, but because they never truly showed up to begin with. That's when you know, that's when you feel it in your bones, this isn't where you're meant to pour anymore, so you stop, you step away, you allow the distance to speak the truth that your words couldn't get across. Letting people miss you isn't manipulation, it's clarity. When you're constantly available, people forget what it feels like to not have you around, they take your empathy for granted, your check-ins, your support, your willingness to listen. It becomes background noise in their lives. But the moment you pull back, the shift is felt. Suddenly, the silence highlights your worth in ways your words never could. That absence, that space, it becomes a mirror, and they're left to sit with it, to look into it, to feel the weight of what they didn't appreciate when it was within reach. You can't force people to see your value. You can't convince someone to treat you better. That realization is painful, but it's also freeing. Because once you accept it, you stop begging for the bare minimum. You stop accepting half-hearted efforts. You stop waiting to be chosen by someone who is never ready to handle what you bring. Instead, you stand in your power, you reclaim your presence, and you decide that being missed is not the goal, being respected is. But missing you, that's the byproduct, because people will miss you. They'll miss your energy, your wisdom, your calm in their chaos. They'll replay the conversations, the laughs, the moments where you showed up without hesitation. And they'll start to realize you weren't like the rest . You were rare, you were real, and they didn't realize the depth of your presence until it was no longer there to soothe them. That's when it sinks in. Not because you told them, but because your absence told the story better than your presence ever could. Letting them miss you is also about giving yourself back to yourself. When you stop showing up for people who only notice your silence, not your struggle, you finally have space to show up for you . You begin to reconnect with your own needs, your own joy, your own voice. You remember that your worth was never meant to be proven, it was meant to be known. By you first and foremost, and once you embody that truth, you naturally attract people who reflect it back to you. Not everyone will. Some will never get it. They'll call you distant, cold, changed. But that's only because they were comfortable with the version of you who overextended, who overcompensated, who kept the peace at your own expense. That version of you is gone now, and what remains is someone who knows their worth too deeply to hand it out freely. You're no longer afraid of losing people who were never afraid of losing you. You've learned that peace is found not in proximity, but in presence your presence. And you'll never again give that away to someone who hasn't earned it. Let them miss you. Let them feel the quiet where your voice used to be. Let them sit with the realization that you were the one who always cared, always tried, always stayed. And while they're sitting with that silence, you'll be moving forward, lighter, stronger, and more whole than ever, because you finally remembered your absence is just as powerful as your presence, and sometimes it's even louder.